Okay, good evening here. It is Wednesday evening, September 5th, 2018. We are tracking now Major Hurricane Florence out in the central of the Atlantic. This is a picture of her right here, and this is a surprise. I was not expecting to see it get this strong. The National Hurricane Center was not expecting it to get this strong. Really, the only model that saw this type of intensity in the short term was the American model, the GFS. But this has really, really intensified, which only raises the stakes as we head toward the weekend and the point of contention where Florence is going to reach a fork in the road in the atmosphere. And really, really, the stakes are high if this takes the western track. So let's dive into it here. Let's look at the National Hurricane Center's track. They really only go out to Monday here. And the fact that this dot here at 2 p.m. on Monday is this far to the south kind of tips the National Hurricane Center's hand in their thinking that they probably believe this is going to take a westward track in the direction of the United States. That does not mean it's going to hit the United States, but it means it's going to at least get very, very close some point next week if it takes that track. That's still a big if, but it's becoming more likely now at this point. The reason for this kind of tipping their hand is that in order for this storm to escape east out to sea, it has to be picked up by a trough, which I'll show you in a second on some of the models, and it's going to have to be further north than this to get picked up by that trough. If it's this far south and takes this little westward jog, which a lot of the models have recently picked up on, which is why they've shifted to the west, this is not going to take the early path out to sea. If it goes out to sea, it will be a very, very long game. So let's now jump over here to the models. We'll look at the GFS here first. This is the 500 millibar map. This is the latest run, of the GFS. And this really shows right here around hour 36 this westward movement. Watch it from hour 30, and then the next day you can see the storm right here in this area. It's really going back and then forward. It really travels mostly to the west. And the reason why this western motion is important is that as we roll it forward here, Saturday, and now we're into Sunday, this area up here opens up. So we're going to go back and see there's a big ridge in place, the thickness up to 588, all the way up to the New Jersey latitude. And then as you roll it forward, this is the point right here as you get into late Saturday and Sunday where this area opens up. There's a weakness in the ridge, a brief weakness, and this is Florence's chance to escape. And that westward motion instead of northwest or north-northwest motion leaves Florence down here as opposed to further north up here, which is where she could have been if she didn't have that westward motion. And now if we go into one of yesterday's GFS runs, so I'm going to jump now over to that area. So let's get the same hour. So here we're at 18Z on Saturday. This is the most recent run. Let's look where 18Z on Saturday was in this run yesterday. So this is the old run yesterday, and this is the new run. You see, it's not a huge difference. It's not a huge difference. So you got new run, old run, new run. But the difference there is just enough so that in this old run, where this storm is further to the north, it's just close enough to this weakness. So if we run it forward, this is the old run again, it's able to start to link up with this weakness here and eventually get dragged to the north and over time out to sea. And there she goes. Now notice though, when she's getting dragged north, after she gets dragged to the north, notice what forms to her west. This area of high pressure, this new ridge over the western Atlantic. And that's very, very significant now that the storm is slowing down and staying just a little bit further to the south early in the run. So if we go back now to the current GFS, again, this is Saturday evening, we'll run it forward while the door is open. She tries to go north a little bit. See, she does feel the weakness, so it's not totally, the weakness is still there. There's still a chance that she can go north, but it's just a little bit too far south for it to matter, so that now, as we run forward, as the new ridge starts building in over the western Atlantic between Bermuda and the east coast of the United States, now the storm gets trapped underneath it, and the clockwise flow around the high pressure, if you're on the south side, think of a clock going from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock. That's what's going to happen to Florence. She's going to get swung around this new piece of energy and get sent dangerously close to the east coast. Now, whether she actually makes landfall like she does here in this GFS run, Well, that's to be determined. But now, look, when we get out here, look, now we're into Thursday of next week. Now we're out into day 8. We're 192 hours out. So that starts to get murky out in that area. But what we do know is that if she misses the trough, this ridge is absolutely going to be there. And really, if you live in the Northeast of the Mid-Atlantic, you know the ridge is going to be there, because if you've been there in the last week or two, it has been ungodly hot for this time of year. It feels like July in the Northeast, in the Mid-Atlantic. It does not feel like early September. And this pattern is caused by big ridging between Bermuda and the northeast coast of the United States, the Bermuda High, as it's, well chronicalized. So what you have going on here is a pattern that's favoring big ridging. So if this storm is not far enough off, when the next phase of that ridge takes over, you are going to have a very, very, very interesting situation by this time next week. So let's now go into the European model run. This model here is weaker initially, so you can't really see the storm on this map at hour 24. It's in this area here. It will develop. It will show up. And this is what it was showing today. These are going to be 24-hour increments, so it'll run forward a little bit faster. So if we get to the point of contention on Saturday and Sunday, this is Sunday morning, we won't have an 18Z Saturday to compare it exactly to the GFS. But what we do have is good enough. Because what the European shows, so here's our storm right here. Notice this piece of ridging that pokes out right here to the north of the storm. Just enough. It's very, very subtle. It's not huge, but it's just enough so that it keeps the storm down here to the south instead of, up a little bit further north to due east of Bermuda. It's southeast of Bermuda instead of due east. And that's just enough so that when we run it forward, like the GFS, there goes the ridge out. There goes the trough out, Trough lifts out. Ridge builds in. Massive ridge on the European model. Look at that. And now the storm is trapped underneath it, and it has nowhere to go as we run it but toward the east coast of the United States. Again, toward the east coast. Not necessarily into it. It gets in fact, this run actually stalls it off the east coast. But again, this is 8 days out. That's where the pattern becomes murky. What is important here is we get 4 or 5 days out is what happens to the southeast of Bermuda. That's where the stakes really are right now. But know that if it does go to the west, this could be a very, very significant event. Because if you go back throughout history, and I'm not going to go through all of them here tonight because it's still pretty far out, but there are some very, very, very nasty storms that turned to the west underneath a building ridge and exploded in intensity. And if you had a storm that got in this area over here where the European model is showing it, and the GFS for that matter, to the west of Bermuda, moving in a west or northwest fashion, the stakes are going to be very, very high that it's either going to hit in terms of whether it hits the coast or somehow finds a path out to sea, southeast of New England, because it's very, very likely it's going to be a major hurricane. This is not going to be a small event when it gets into that area. So that's really what you're looking at here with the models. Again, it is not set in stone that it's going to the west, but I would certainly favor a western path right now based on what I'm seeing, based on the trends on Friday, where it looks like it's going to take that little jog to the west, like we talked about at the start of this video. And what that means for pretty much anybody between the Carolinas and New England is that you should have a hurricane plan in place next week. Again, this does not mean you are going to get hit by a hurricane, but it means that there is absolutely the possibility of a hurricane next week. And as I said in the post a few moments ago, luck tends to favor the prepared, and you may need to be lucky next week to miss this if it takes the left-hand turn at the fork in the road. All right, that's it for tonight. See ya.